And I guess we'll begin. We're all here and organized. So I'll ask you for your patience as I try to chair the meeting, and we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next we need a motion to allow the Board of Trustees to attend remotely through electronic participation. But I guess
Don't have
we
anybody
don't have
tonight,
any, so
so
we're
we're
gonna pass on that. And now we're going to go to public comments.
We need a roll call, though. We need to do a roll call.
The roll call. That's good. So I'll ask Megan to take the roll, please.
Trustee Gayton.
Here.
Trustee Campbell.
Here.
Trustee Thomas. Here. Trustee Fritz.
Here.
Trustee Dom.
Here.
Trustee Cook.
Yes. Now we're going to go to public comments, and we have Mr. Ralph Wenzel here to speak, and Elizabeth has provided us with a letter that Mr. Wenzel sent regarding the Lions Marsh erosion. An issue that apparently has been brewing for a number of years. So, Mr. Wenzel.
Well, I think the main thing is, and I talked to Executive Director Kessler about it, is to get the three agencies together and sit down and find out if in fact MCCD would like to take care of the problem, and then how to get the Fox Waterway Agency involved in IDNR to sit down together and figure out a best way that would be a solution for everybody. And the money, if money is going to be spread out, not just at MCCD, but Fox Water or and IDNR to take care of it. In 2019, they had kind of a quasi thing agreement, and I think Ron Barker at FWA at the time was wanted to use geotubes to block it off, but it's getting worse every year. And I live just south of the property, and the shallow water buoys keep moving out farther and farther and farther to the east into the riverbed, because everything that was a peninsula originally is now 3 islands, and they're going to be going pretty quick. And like I think I said in the letter, we did lose an eagle's nest this year, and 3 baby chicks went with it. And that's really a shame, because everybody used to go park their boat and watch the chicks grow. And you see them first peek out of the nest, and then pretty soon they're flapping their wings and testing their wings. And now I guess the eagles have built the nest farther back into the bay, but we can't get in to see it. So that's lost. But we're just losing more and more property, and it's just silting in the river. So the FWA, I think, is concerned. I would think that MCCD should be concerned, and the IDNR should be concerned. And if we get everybody together, I've talked to Joe Keller from FWA and Greg Kelly from IDNR, and they all sound like they want to do it. So it's kind of not in your ballpark, but if you want, I can maybe have Joe call Ms. Kessler and get things rolling. But that's all. Thank you.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and we appreciate your bringing this back up to our attention. And I think Elizabeth and the staff have been alerted and taken preliminary steps to open a discussion first with our staff and then with these other agencies. So at some point, you'll be getting a follow-up.
I hope I do it in my life.
I can sympathize with that. So thank you. And then any other public comments that you're aware of out in Zoom land?
There's no one online.
then we'll go to 5.0 new business and review of regular meeting agenda items for next week. And of course, we had that in our packet, and there's a consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they wish to discuss or any items to remove from the consent agenda? If not, then we'll just leave it as it stands, and there's plenty of material in the packet to review. 250 pages, so we'll have our own. All right, so now to 5.2. First reading amendments to comprehensive administrative policy and procedural manual, standards and conduct, whistleblower protection. And I think Elizabeth's going to explain what that involves.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So the Illinois General Assembly this past year, they passed a very large criminal reform bill called the Safety Act, and it's got many provisions. And this specific policy that we're just highlighting tonight to add to our set of policies under our comprehensive policies, and we'll go into the personnel policy as well, is called whistleblower protection. And we were recently at the legal symposium that the Illinois Association of Park Districts places on, DERMA, and sends out legislative alerts and policy samples that we need to take a look at. And so this act goes into effect. They actually went, the governor signed it on January 13th, but there's specific things that we've outlined with this Whistleblowing Protection Act, and it's to protect an individual who would be to file a complaint against an appointed or elected official or another fellow coworker. And so there's protections that need to be put in place, an auditor that would be responsible for facilitating the investigation. And so the policy that we have in front of you tonight does map that process. It puts our human resources manager, Dan Hyder, as our point in auditor for complaints that are filed with notification placed to myself as the executive director, and then of course working in tandem with our legal counsel and the DERMA's general counsel. And then at a level of, it's obviously the executive director, then I'm out of that and it goes to our board president and then council and the DERMA and looking at those areas, and likewise with the board. So that's what's mapping. It's on first reading this evening. Andrew has reviewed it, made some amendments and adjustments to that policy that we presented. So we worked together on that. And Andrew, you're online, so I basically have I don't have anything else to add to that.
I think you did a good job summarizing it. You know, that the statute provides a lot of the framework for the policy, and then, you know, as you indicated, PDERMA put together a model, and then we worked together based on your input and staff's input and my input to sort of tweak it to best fit the policies and the actual operations of the district. So that's kind of where we are to now.
And once this is passed, every employee and everyone will get a copy of this policy. It needs to be provided to you annually. And obviously the documentation and confidentiality is of utmost importance.
So when is ours? I mean, I think you have different time periods and different provisions have to be done by. And what is the date on this?
Well, so this one went into effect, I believe, in compliance July 1st. Okay, so we're trailing a little bit behind. We're trying to catch up with all the things again.
Oh,
The bill is humongous. So you're going to see some other things related as we update for our law enforcement team on their SOPs. There'll be things that cross over in personnel policy manual as well. So we're going through and sifting all that stuff, which is part of this criminal reform piece, but this is just one.
All right, then next is 5.3, and we'll expand on the first reading of amendments, comprehensive investment policy and procedural manual regarding wildlife propagation, rehabilitation, and programming.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have been updating and reviewing chapter by chapter of our comprehensive policies. We reviewed, second reading, our natural resources policies. These are existing policies that relate to how we manage wildlife. Basically, we've reviewed them, we've identified and numbered them so they fit in our new numbering scheme, and they were minimal changes. Sarah Denham is online, as Ed is, and again, I thought they did a lovely job. It's any questions that we can ask about some of the policies. The work that they do with the Wildlife Resource Center.
Any discussion regarding that? If not, we'll move on to 5.4, the discussion regarding the annual meeting calendar for 2022 and pending committees. 2.03. So Dan Elizabeth's gonna give the historical background and what practical changes to our monthly meetings.
Bill, we're required annually to post our meetings for the fall year. So we're just looking ahead. We drafted basically following what the board set in motion now past year, which meetings a month, all the third Thursday of the month, followed by the next Tuesday of the regular meeting where the voting is on those items. We may have special call meetings that are called, but we don't need to put that on this agenda, particularly for your regularly scheduled meetings. So I want to make sure that the board is okay in moving forward with that plan, posting them here at Brookdale. I did highlight in the resolution that was prepared for you the January dates and the September dates, and I just want to draw your attention because they do go off our normal third Thursday and follow up on the Tuesday. The January date, President Henning will be out of town, and so we did want to accommodate his schedule because the January date is our tentative budget approval. And we also need to be able to have our tentative budget adopted so that we can have 30 days of review before we have our public hearing in February. And then we're pretty much on a really compressed time frame that everything has to work like clockwork if we're going to get it to the county in March, and so we can get it through their processes and have it approved before April 1st. So we are asking that for the week of January, if we need to do 2 meetings, we can put it on the calendar of Monday, January 10th for the committee of the whole, and then do that following Thursday on the same week with the regular meeting. That way, if there's any changes or whatever, we can accommodate that. And then for the September meeting, due to the National Recreation Park Association Conference, we're asking that that be moved up as well. So the same thing would follow the cow on a Monday, September 12th at 5. And also then the following that same week, Thursday, the 15th, would be the board meeting. And so that's what we're proposing if the board is agreeable with the schedule for meetings.
Any comments or?
It's too far along for me. I go week by week. Oh, sounds fine.
I think it looks.
And if we decide, like I know this past, if things, it's hard to predict for those that have been with us for a while. We have certain things that routinely occur annually that we know we need to hit. And then you can have a month and everything just happens to be coming at you, and it's hard to predict on those types of things. So if we don't have material, then we can collapse to one meeting and be cognizant of everybody's time. But if they're there, we'll make the best use of the time. The other item that I wanted to bring up is the standing committees. And several years ago, what we did when we moved to the committee of the whole in the regular meeting, we eliminated having standing committees of finance and standing committees of outreach and advocacy, because we felt those were important conversations. We had one group in one place of the building, another group that was happening simultaneously. And then when we brought 3 board members together, you know, obviously 2 people couldn't talk if you were on the committee, and then we got in conflict and potentially OMA. And of course, we want free communication to occur. Finance is important for everybody to participate. So my only suggestion is as I'm updating the policies to our comprehensive policy manual, I need to now map that to exactly maybe what our practice is. And since we kind of did an experiment, I need to go back and clean that up. And then I would propose that we leave the concept of the board or the president of the year with the appearance of the board can establish a standing committee. It may be for something, but it's not prescriptive to having to be finance or having to be outreach. That makes sense. Okay, if everybody's good, then I'll propose the policy change to reflect that.
I think that's reasonable.
Well, I think so too, because and then that actually gives us opportunity maybe that we do something, another type of standing committee, not just finance. I mean, we kind of dropped outreach and advocacy a little bit along the way, so maybe that's an opportunity. That's another
All right, then. So now we go to 5.5, which is an update on utility scale solar energy. And I think we're going to hear from Elizabeth and John, and there were emails and information in the packet that sort of get us up to speed on some of this, which looks like a potential opportunity, but it probably also has some ramifications and trade-offs that we need to start to consider. So with that, please enlighten us.
All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Ed Collins, our Director of Land Preservation and Natural Resources, and Bell Seiler, our Land Administration and Preservation Manager, to kind of talk a little bit and lead us through a conversation on just the type of inquiries that we're getting and really what is utility scale solar energy.
I'll start, but I'll be very brief and hand off to Val. Just a little bit of background. The district did do some work on small scale community solar energy and whether it would be feasible to or desirable to do that on district sites a few years ago. But we are really looking at a different type of animal here when we're looking at the larger scale. Staff has received several inquiries from larger solar companies regarding whether the district would be interested in placing solar fields on some of its sites. So Val and I have done some background research. Andrew did some research on the legalities of it, and Val put together, I think, a very comprehensive memo on where we're at. We are not talking about a particular potential here, but we're really asking the board to discuss it and give us some direction on whether we should continue to pursue it. If we do, it will take some staff time, and we want to have you have that discussion and give direction before we move any further on it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Val. I think is going to go through some of the points on the memo, or maybe has some things to add. Go ahead, Val.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, no, I put together the summary, and it kind of outlines some of the basic parameters that we considered. That we talked to Andrew about it, and he gave us some ideas, and so you understand that process that we went through. Right now, we're just trying to identify and explain to you just the general characteristics of this type of lease. And so I put together several points of just describing general characteristics of what we're talking about in terms of number of acreage that we're talking about, the rents that we've been heard discussed about this, how it's got to be connected. It goes directly into the grid, so proximity to high power transmission lines are important. We're talking about everything we've heard talk about it is dealing with what is currently agricultural land, because that's the easiest for a transition to this type of use. They're long lease terms. 30 years is kind of a typical time frame for this. Most of what we've heard about says there's a study phase that these developers go through. So what we've heard is that they're willing to pay for basically an option to go further, but it may be several years before whether they would go further. We talked about decommissioning plans that are required. The state of Illinois requires agreements between the Illinois Department of Agriculture, the facility owner, and the county regarding the operation and decommissioning of these things so that they're not just left. It's pretty comprehensive. So it's called as Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. So it's something that addresses all the what ifs and down the road things that you would be concerned about. So we outline those, and then we just put together a short list of maybe some caveats that staff thought that came to mind from staff's point of view in terms of what we would want to see as maybe limiting conditions that, well, if we were going to consider it, we'd want, no net negative impact on the environment, obviously. We'd want to have minimal impact on any public aesthetics of the property. We talked about maybe possible uses of the revenue generated from this. And then obviously how whatever we're going to be doing, we would be doing in conjunction with IDNR, which I think a lot of the state requirements already provide for. But the summary is high level, but it would give us, if we talked about this and if you feel it would be an opportunity that the district should consider, it would give us some direction to go back to some of these inquiries and take a further step, or say, you know what, the board's not interested in this at all. So that's kind of where we're at. So I just open it up to questions, discussion, and direction.
All right, so is there anyone who would like to? lead this
Well,
off?
yeah, one thing, I have gone through this whole process. I have a 27-acre industrial solar farm. So I know exactly what you're saying as far as there'll be several different solar companies that will try to get you into an option type situation. So they go through their due diligence and stuff like that. So very familiar, and I very pro solar farm situation. I think as far as the revenue, from what I'm seeing, is going to be a little bit better than farming, but it's basically going to sort of wash that ag income, and they'll get a little bit more, probably 20 to 30% more with the solar farm. Maybe even a little bit more, depending. I don't know what types of rents you've been hearing, but I know what I'm getting. So, and it's a decent one.
Well, if I could comment in Al's packet, I think he quoted figures of $800 to $2,000 an acre. And I'm not into agriculture other than, more as an observer. But that seems considerably more than average.
Well, yeah, you'll net the 800 with farming, or well, actually you'll gross it with the farming. You'll net it with the solar.
That's a
Yeah.
big range, 8 to 2,000.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see
I think
anything up
somewhere in the
that
middle,
high.
'cause we've been approached. I've been approached,
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, my point of view, I'm a farmer.
You're on farm ground.
Right, and I farmed hills and rocks and stuff, and it's good, and they want level land, they want the good stuff. And
Well, not necessarily.
well, I mean, by us anyway,
Okay.
but it's gotta be hooked up to it's gotta be near a substation or power, or, but
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if you guys are gonna put it, if they wanna go on the stuff that's already grass, I don't know, or they just wanna go on farmland. But I know that whatever wrench they're gonna get is really good, but my only question is the way technology changes. 30 years is a long time to tie something up. And look what's changed, look what's changed in the last 10 years. I mean, for the, it's the conservation district, I suppose it's good,
there's no
but I mean,
capital out of the conservation district's pocket. It's all
right, oh, I know, yeah, I know, I mean, it wouldn't be nothing, it's just the way stuff changes, I mean, it's.
Well, in the rent role, basically, I get a certain amount and then I get a 2%.
So then, yeah,
Every year compounded, so.
Or you mean it goes up 2% every year?
escalate.
yeah,
So they could build that up front.
Yeah. So, and then compounded.
I mean, it's, you know, it's for me, I'm a farmer and.
Well, I farm also.
I know, but it's,
But, yeah, if you ever want to see it, the one we have is. on
there's
the
stuff
corner
all.
Of Charles and Raffle Road is where ours is. That's better than ours.
If I can ask Val or Ed, does any of the land that you are considering, which you had mentioned in the points that you made, that you wanted land that did not border major roads so that it would be less visible to the public. Do we have considerable acreage that would qualify from that point of view and also has some access to the power grid?
Bill, that's a great question. And what Val and I have done at this point is made a very cursory examination. There probably are such areas, but prior to us going in depth in that, we really wanted to get a clear direction from the board. Val, do you want to add anything?
I'd say the answer is probably yes. But this discussion is not about any particular transaction or real estate. You know, it's more high level concept, whether if the right situation under the right circumstances, would it be something that you would consider? You know, I think it's just, I mean, some of those things would probably be more negotiation type things that we would be a future discussion. The other thing I'll just mention, I don't know the difference between rents in what what we've heard, and then some of the community solar things that were really more commonly discussed in years past. So there may be a little bit. I mean, I think from what from the people that have contacted us, I'm pretty confident that we would see at least $800 as a start on the gross rent. So yeah, that's going to be higher than agriculture, but of course you would get, you know, the net gain would be, you know, you would reduce that by whatever agricultural rents you would have received on that. But it was, to me, I believe this may be something about the scale of this utility scale, which is, you know, large, not 20 acres or 30 acres, but 500 to 1,000 acres. I think maybe that means they're able to pay more for the economies there. So I don't know, but from what we've heard, I think that $2,000 figure that we heard from one person might be an outlier as far as you know, that inquiry I didn't take as seriously. I think he was maybe a little less professional, but the 800 seemed pretty solid to me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I do have an observation. Okay, so the only thing I'm thinking about is, so we have so much land in agriculture right now. We know over time we want to convert it to, we want to restore it. We know we had a conversation I think last month or recently. We're probably never going to restore all of the agricultural land because there are opportunities with regenerative farming and working with the county and community farmers. There's partnerships that we've had with that, so that we probably will always have, the comment I understood from last time, we'll probably always have something in agriculture, but over time we need to convert most of it, or at least a good portion of it. It's going to take a long time. So 30 years, you're right, Pat, the technology really does change. But 30 years, we wouldn't get to all these parcels in 30 years anyway. And in the meantime, the difference, maybe even if the difference isn't, there's not a lot of difference in terms of rent. You have the pollinator gardens underneath them that is nourishing that soil so that when they decommission, you're ready to go. And that's the whole process. So I guess I think from that perspective, from my perspective, it would be worth looking into more. I recognize that there are a lot of hurdles, and one of them is going to be people wondering, you know, is it too big? Is it too close? But it is an interesting opportunity, given that that's what we're gonna do with some of this land anyway.
I would comment, I would think public perception, they would probably think it'd be good, because a lot of people come, oh, got all this land and.
Possibly. People
I don't
are-
know.
yeah, I don't
You don't
know.
think
There's a
so?
lot of negative on it. It was-
Oh,
I had to sell our farm to the neighbors with the promise of pollination, vegetation underneath their panel section, but yeah, that would be one thing. And yeah, maybe we could explore it in not quite the grand scale of several thousand acres or something. Maybe and the thought of doing a couple hundred acres or something, which is still large.
Well, I have appreciated Andrew's legal analysis that looks like, it's within our state order to potentially proceed, and so there's perhaps not a legal roadblock. The politics of green energy, seem to be ascendant in the global situation, and I suppose, across the country, wind and solar and so forth. So, but there will be some pushback from traditional agriculture because we're taking land out of production. So, there's going to be differences of opinion. I suppose if enough land is taken out of production, the remaining farmers will benefit because the price of grain will, should go up because you remove land from production and potentially, creating a market impulse to, to boost prices. I have some concerns about decommissioning. I don't know that these outfits have a track record yet of how successfully or exactly attentive they are to the details of decommissioning. And so when we think that they're going to help us with our restoration, I think that's a possible, but not necessarily a given. And so that's an unknown.
Well, from what Val said too, and it's state law, and they're pretty adamant about the agreements that we have to sign with the USDA and with the county and the state and everything. Val's 100% right that they do really provide the decommissioning.
Looks like it'll work, right?
Yeah, that was my main concern too.
Right.
That I'll be alive then.
Our experience with the Illinois EPA on this issue of land contamination makes me a little uncertain about, even though something looks like it's written down and it's in black and white, and when the push comes to shove, you get into a back and forth. The developer says, well, I've done what I promised, and then you hold his feet to the fire if the state doesn't follow through in the way you think it will. So I don't know the answer to that, but this question of paying for the option, can you expound on that a little more? In other words, we may have nothing to lose if we sort of keep the option open, and beyond that, let them pay us something to prepare a plan or a recommendation or something.
Well, my understanding is that they would propose a lease, let's say 30 years, that included an option period at the front end of it. So it would be part of the lease where they would have the option probably to back out if it doesn't turn out to be economically feasible, if that determination is made in the first 3-4 years of their study. But we would not have the option of changing our minds, probably. At least it would be a real full-blown lease that they would have the option of not pursuing further after some period of time. That's the way I would understand it. So, but it would have all your provisions that you would know every, you know, the income stream would be predetermined from year 1 to year 30. And it wouldn't prevent, from what I understand it, it does not prevent us from using it or continue to lease it to other, you know, for agricultural purposes until they're ready to actually implement a plan. So that seemed like a positive from the discussions we've had. Ed, do you have any, is that consistent with your understanding?
Yeah, Val, I think you're right on there. I believe that they need to do some pretty comprehensive work to determine if the grid will take it and if it's going to be economically viable for them. And the figures we heard from preliminary inquiries was anywhere from 2 to 4 years for that process to unfold.
And are they paying us during that time
Yeah.
some nominal amount?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
I ended up negotiating with at least 5 different companies during that period of time. What happens is one will come in and tie it up for a year or 2 and decide they don't want to do it. And another one steps in and we just sort of, it took like 5 to 7 years to get past that and get a company that was really going to do it. So yeah, during that whole period, because you are paid so much the first year, they usually increase it the second year and the third year.
One of the things that we had a conversation too, and again, trying to, number one, if this is something the district should pursue, and if options, and if so, how would we go about it? If we've got, you know, a variety of different entities soliciting us to do business with, do we need to consider each on a case by case, or do we develop some type of prospectus of proposal, you know, a request for proposal that, like we did with the bison, and see, you know, kind of set our framework up and then place that out to the market and see who nibbles at that based controlling that. I don't know if that's something we had some discussion with that.
I guess I never thought of it, but that's probably sort of a good idea. It might take away some of the riffraff type companies, the smaller ones that aren't going to do anything anyways. If you do an RFP.
Would it be possible to maybe do sort of an RFI preliminary to an RFP just to see what kind of, I feel like an RFP is a little bit too formal for what we're looking for at the moment.
The
Just so
I
we can
being
get an
information.
I'm sorry?
The I is information.
Yes.
Request for information.
Yeah. Just so we can see what that looks like, what the market's looking like, and should we, I guess at that point, decide to move forward.
It's a good suggestion. Well, that that addresses one of the concerns I had, which is, you know, so you get that first company, like, okay, but then maybe you don't really feel, you know, you don't know if that was your best choice. And so maybe having people talk, you know, give you information up front is to kind of.
From what I've understood, the whole industry runs on what depends on the governmental subsidies and stuff and so that it's changing constantly. So it all depends on timing, I think, for a lot of it.
Well, Elizabeth, do we need a motion and then some type of show of hands, or is it just, if you heard enough from?
I think we all showed there's some interest at least.
Yes.
For us to take it further to staff and maybe come back with a better kind of, this is what we recommend based on what we heard from the board. I didn't hear absolutely no way, no how, you know, so completely.
Well, hey, it's kind of like the people that, you know, have the garbage bag up by their mailbox and say, no, don't.
Yeah.
You know, as long as it's not on my property, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I do think there is, and we're bringing it, you know, it's all in which is why some of the parameters, that is something that the district can be compatible with, that it makes sense, because there are any type of action that's going to have more of a temporary, we're going to have to be able to communicate the why and the importance of.
Well, and we're going to have to rely on our staff to know what areas and specific sites that would be good for that. You know, we don't know that ourselves.
No, you're right. And Elizabeth, you're right too. Yeah, we would have to be very careful about how we approach this and do it cautiously and know the why, know, what we need to be able to defend basically, because I think we'll be on solid ground and just being able to communicate that this is just another means to the same end that we were shooting for with the agricultural use, but it's just maybe a different approach that's, I think, consistent with our mission and purpose also. So
I also think that the pushback they got from Duke Energy would be a good thing to look at. What were some of the concerns of the neighbors around that area? What were they looking at, and making sure that we can address that as well up front?
that's good.
All right, so then, Elizabeth, you're writing, and you'll staff will take what they've heard from us and sort of come up with a next step. And I thought Ray's request for information seems like some type of process, that might encourage the commercial outfits, that, okay, these people are serious. We just need to make a pitch to them that, answers their questions. And so, well, then we'll go on to, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. I was misled. I thought only misled because it said John Klinger was going to talk about the solar, but now John is going to talk about restructuring the Division of Operations and Public Safety along with personnel.
I would have really led you guys astray. I would have invented all of it. I haven't studied any of that, so you get the right people speaking about it. Thank you so much. As you know, the midsummer, the district was left with a vacant position, a key manager position. And instead of just petitioning to just bring somebody right back in and fill a gap or fill a hole, the staff got together and talked about, how are we operating? How are we doing? Are there opportunities to capture some efficiency by looking at relining? Do we have things in the right spots and whatnot? So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about, cover a couple of things. One is kind of how we came to the point of looking at a restructure. I gave you the first one, and that was we had a vacancy. And then I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you the current structure that we have, and then also compare that to the new or proposed structure. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, and that is, how are the tasks divided, and what camp are they in? So I'm going to move on to the next slide there. Thank you. Again, looking at this as an opportunity. One of the things that we realized, the staff realized when they were examining things, is that we seem to be focused more on department projects. So there were the planning projects, and there were the site complete projects, and there were the facility maintenance projects, and something coming through from the police or things like that. And we were like, okay, in each one of those cases, everybody is communicating with one another in some fashion. Everybody has a role to play in that. So we were like, okay, then if that's the case, shouldn't we turn this a little bit and look at it as divisional projects? So these are the operations divisional projects for this year, and we're going to work on this set of projects for this year. Sort of happening de facto anyway. But this concept really encourages the idea of coordination and communicating with one another and collaboration. It was happening piecemeal, but this would kind of formalize it. So that's one of the first, I guess, goals or things we believe we will accomplish with this kind of restructuring. And the most important part of that is we will be putting tasks in the wheelhouse of a position that is most skilled at doing it. And I want to draw attention to the word position. I didn't say person, I said position. We would be looking at, you know, there are certain positions. I'm a pretty simple person, and I understood it very simply when I said this. You wouldn't send a mechanic out to plant trees when you had a landscaper in their shop trying to fix their mower. It's just getting those tasks aligned with the people most skilled at doing that, or I should say the positions most skilled at doing that. And that's one of the things as we began to sift through that, we realized that that could happen for us if we restructured a bit. The second critical thing that came out of it is that, and I'm going to brag for just a little bit for Harry Weeborg and Ben O'Day in our Sites and Fleet Department. They have created a really efficient and effective management and operation structure in how they're communicating with their staff and how their tasks are assigned and how they're efficiently operating those things. And we want to take that concept and bring it into building maintenance because it's not been there. We believe that we can do that because they have a really good system in place. Another item, and this is, I sort of say this by going out of the gate, we know this, and that is, you folks have seen the numbers. You've seen the budget numbers where our land and our sites have gone up on a trajectory like this, and our staff has actually fallen in the last, 8-10 years. So we know that getting lots of people is just not something right now financially we have the resources to do. So we know going out of the gates that we're going to have to get this all done, to continue to manage the infrastructure the way we need to. We're going to have to augment the staff's resources with outside contractors. And we're going to know going out the gate that we're going to have to do that. We do use contractors. There's no doubt about it. They're out all the time doing things here and there. But many times they're an afterthought. And we would be putting them as a forethought. If it's out of our capacity to do, we'll be looking for utilizing a contractor. We have the ability, but the capacity is the other part of that. So I want to take back and I want you to look at the current structure of the division. Okay, and let's see. You'll notice on the left in blue, that's the police. We restructured them a couple of years ago. As you move over to the right or the center of the page, you've got in yellow, that's planning. In the brown, in the right of center, that's the site and fleet division. On the right side of that, you'll see the sites part of it, and on the left side, you see the fleet people. And then over in the gray on the right side there, that's facilities maintenance as it currently exists. Now I've identified a couple of those in red, and that's because I wanted to point out that those are positions that would be going away. Okay, they're not there. The facilities maintenance manager is at the top there, and then down in among the employees is the electrician. Both those positions would be vacated and not filled. So that's the current structure as we have it. Elizabeth, on the next slide there, and you'll see this is the proposed structure. And in this case, the police remain the same. Planning is in yellow, and you can see that there's an added person there. Okay, moving over now to the right in the brown, you'll see what we're now calling operations. And drop down below that, and you'll see that you have on the left side of that in the brown, parks and fleet. And then the right side of that, you have building maintenance. And you'll note that there is no building maintenance manager in this, or I should say, yeah, building maintenance manager in this. Instead, what we want to do is put a supervisory role in there. Now, I said before that Harry Weeborg and Ben O'Day in our Sites and Fleet Department had created a nice communication and workflow approach on the, so that's on the right side of that in the brown. I want to see that same thing happen I'm sorry, that's on the left side as into the park and fleet. I want to see that same thing go into building maintenance on the right side, using that same structure there to accomplish that. Over in planning, one of the key elements, one of the key things that we recognize is that the people in our planning department have the skill set to be implementing our very complex projects, our larger scale, more complex projects. That's more in a wheelhouse of a planner or a landscape architect or an engineer or something like that. And they would be more aligned to a planning department. So that's one of the things to be able to make this work is we've got to shift some of those projects and some of those tasks over to the planning department. Now I'm going to move into what is in the different tasks and how they're realigning. In the operations are going to be the preventative, the routine, and the non-routine. The preventative is like the inspections, HVAC inspections, water, sewer servicing, and those kinds of inspections, those regular things, the things that you have to do. It's like changing the oil in your car every 6 months or 6,000 miles. In addition to that, currently our staff do in-house small scale roofing, painting, things like that. It's the kinds of projects that don't interest contractors, something like a privy, roof on a privy, or painting a privy, or those kinds of things, a wood bin. So those will stay with our in-house team. Moving down into the routine side of things, you have everything the district has some sort of maintenance approach to it, whether it's a gate or lighting. I mean, we have to be changing the timers on things, especially this time of year. All of these things, gutter debris removal, water conditioning, all of these things take time. When you have multiple buildings in multiple areas, it adds up. Adding salt to my water softener at my house, 10-minute job. Okay, take that and magnify that across the district. You're talking about days or a day every month to do that kind of stuff. In some cases, it's a weekly task at a Lost Valley Visitor Center with a lot of water going through that place. So, in addition to those routines, a wall gets damaged. Doors need to be maintained. It's just these regular routine kind of things. That's where the custodial side of things. You guys all saw Patty when you walked in. She was here. She's part of that custodial team. And bridge repairs, I'm going to come back to that one in a bit because it kind of ties into something down below. The non-routine are the things, the work orders that come in. Somebody came in and said the furnace doesn't work over here, so we've got to send somebody out there to take a look at it, see if we can troubleshoot it. A window is leaking air, something like that. We got to get out there, we got to caulk it, etc. These are just the kinds of things that come in on a regular basis, daily. These work orders come in daily. It's what breaks, we got to fix. It's as simple as that. The thing I wanted to tie into the bridge repairs also ties into storm damage. In building a structure like this, this will give the operations team the flexibility to shift resources where they best need them. Storm damage is a great example of that. When we get a storm that comes through, basically it knocks out, it's going to impact half a dozen sites. So we'd like to be able to shift resources over to that, put the staff where it needs to be, and specifically in the maintenance, the building maintenance people are more more in the wheelhouse of handling heavy equipment operation and things like that. They may not be out there handling chainsaws, probably won't be, but they're gonna be doing the other things to support the team that are doing that kind of stuff. Same thing with bridge repairs. When we do a bridge repair, we don't have a week to strip a bridge down and do that because that will shut a trail down for a week. So there you're gonna shift resources from site to fleet over to building maintenance to come in there and try to knock that out in a day. So we go to the communications people and say, look, we're gonna knock this out, close the trail for this day, and we're gonna get this done. So that gives us that kind of flexibility to move back and forth. So that's what's gonna be realigned to the operations people. What's being realigned to the next slide, thank you. Being realigned to planning will be all the things that you guys see come up in the camp for buildings, okay, the camp fund, and more things, and more, because there's a lot of things in the operations budget that are coming through and not necessarily hitting the camp, but they're coming through operations. They're larger scale, they're going to involve bidding, etc. And again, that is in the wheelhouse of planning. That's where we want those kinds of projects working. We think there's efficiency in that because those are the people that are best skilled for that. Painting and stadium gutter replacement. Seems like every year we have something. I mean, every few years we've got to do painting of all of these wood-sided buildings, or they'll deteriorate for us or on us. Another item is building and utilities, utility and building system replacement. I think probably about the first year that Trustee Campbell was here, we had two buildings. Brookdale had been renovated about 25 years ago or 20 years ago. Prairie View had been renovated about 25 years ago. The HVAC systems were antiquated, worn out, and breaking down frequently. So therefore, we put on the books to go ahead and replace all of them at once. Brought in new technology, new efficient systems, new thermostats, the whole part of that. So that would be something that would fall into the wheelhouse of planning as well. And those systems are out; they have an age. It's as simple as that. Structure demolition, that has become a focus of the district in the last few years. We did a lot of that in the early 2000s and probably till about 2013 or so. We kind of suspended it for a few years, and we started back up in about 2017 with some large scale things again. Complex, lots of documents need to be, lots of plans need to be put together. It's in the wheelhouse of people that are in the planning and development field. Building renovations and repurposing. It's happened, I'll bet it happens about once every 4 years. You may not think that we do it, but all of a sudden, boom, there's another one that pops up. This building was renovated, I think, in 2013. It was also renovated in 2000, and I think it was 2000. So it goes through these things. We've done the same thing with Prairie View. It's been renovated twice since I've been here. I mean, it's just what happened. Again, we want that in the wheelhouse of people with the experience of planning. Interior design, it's again, you want that in the wheelhouse of someone in planning, because not only when you invite people to your public centers, not only do you need to look at the function, you need to look at the form, because they're both important. You want an inviting place to bring them and one that has good circulation and things like that. And these are the people that are trained to do it. To the executive summary, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth. It's more the business side of things, so I'll let her speak to that.
John, thank you, and you did a great job of outlining how things are moving, and the whole team really worked together on this to work towards solving something and really starting. Sometimes you have to take things down and then re-put things back where you need to get it organized. But really the key points, just to highlight from a level of what we're going to be asking, is one, it's aligning the essential job functions with our team that we have. We have some talented team members that have been with us for some time. By allowing and shifting some things, we're also allowing professional development of others to pick up a skill set that's going to advance them, and looking forward towards succession planning. The positions were reassessed. We've done that on every time that we look at it. The managers, the directors, they're all tasked with looking at the job descriptions They rewrote it, and you saw that in your packet. I didn't give you the red line versions because the red line versions were pretty scary. I looked at this thing and it just looked like there were just words being changed all over the place because there were a lot of changes just to align things. But at the end of the day, when the positions looked at the essential functions, marginal duties, how things were organized, the positions did not change grades. They stayed within the grades. So you're seeing job description changes, you're seeing title changes, and functions move between, but with that, they graded exactly the same. And Jenny and Andy worked through that as a separate process from those that are designing the job. They do that, it goes over the other side, and they've got a particular system they use to measure that. So we're equal across the entire organization when we evaluate jobs and how they're classified. It does, as John mentioned, eliminates several positions. So that creates a savings, the facility maintenance manager, the part-time electrician, and facility maintenance seasonals. It creates 2 new positions, building maintenance supervisor was mentioned, and a planner landscape architect. What's interesting on our job listing classifications, we did have a building or a facilities maintenance supervisor, but that position was frozen. And when we went out with the manager, we didn't hire the supervisor. That was part of that attrition process for quite some time. So really, the job description that this position was built upon did exist, and it was at that time classified as a grade 20. And then we did at one time have what we called a planner, landscape architect at an entry level or 3 years of experience. And so again, that one was frozen when we reorganized in 2013. We dropped our Department of Planning down to 2 people. And so this basically reestablishes a position that had been there in place before that. So again, that was graded at the same grade, and it came with the changes of made to be the exact same. So getting to the finances to it, and I'm going to speak at a very high level, and then I do know we'll talk a little bit later this evening on more specifics, but the proposed reorganization is a new name of Operations Planning and Public Safety. And for fiscal year 2022, which remains where we're at, we're looking at a total cost savings just for this team of about $40,000 and 196. That's out of fiscal year 2022. As you know, positions have been filled. We would look to align these new duties to go effective in early December, and then bringing on the 2 new team members. By the time you post that, should the board agree for us to move forward to hire for those positions, that would probably be closer to February of 2022. Or it may even be a next fiscal year. But the total cost going 2023 would then, and this is all costs, this includes what I'm showing, this is not just wages, this is your Social Security, it's your IMRF, it is including the benefits, that these individuals, those costs of bringing on those employees with all those additional, with the FICA and Social Security to next year, $40,000 and almost $41,000 to bring that on. When we were back in August, before we started to say stop, because we were having people leaving, at that particular time, we were proposing, or what had come forward through the operations team, was to bring on an additional facilities maintenance worker 1. That is not what you're seeing here in proposing. The cost, it's a little bit less than that going forward, so we had anticipated that, but in essence, by realigning where we functions, that's kind of what we're proposing. So with a thorough review and that opportunity presenting itself, this is where we're focused on. So I'm going to turn that. Any questions on that?
My final comment to the board is that this is something, a new opportunity with Sean. And as you do anything new, we're going to have to find our way through this and feel our way through this. And it's going to take us some time to figure out. We may have to shift some things a little bit here and there as we get moving through this process. We're going to need some flexibility, and if we're coming back and we realize that we need to adjust here or there, we're going to come back and talk to you about it again and say, okay, this and this is doing okay. This is not so much. Here's our solution here for this, and we look for your patience and your support in that. My last comment is that and I said this to Amy and Harry right after we just had kind of created this idea. I said, it's been a long time that I feel like we've been walking uphill with building maintenance and facility maintenance. It's been a long time. And for the first time in a long time, I feel optimistic, very optimistic about it. And it's because we just stepped back, we looked at it and said, okay, we need to just get these things in the right wheelhouse. That's thank you for your time and consideration. We'll entertain any questions you have.
I guess all I would say is I appreciate the fact that every time there's an opening, that instead of just jumping on it and filling it, I think that, you know, in almost over 4 years of watching this process, I think I really appreciate just the deep dive that is taken to make sure we're doing it right. So very thorough and appreciate it.
Well,
Look like you got a lot of weight off your shoulders too. A little bit. It's like you say, you were always fighting the battle.
It's as I said, I tried to come up with the proper metaphor for it. It's like them walking uphill. And now I think we have the opportunity to get at least walking level.
You're like the leader of the orchestra. You know, you have your strings and you have your horns and but what the audience appreciates is the music. Now you know your job is to get the right players, and then if it works, you know, it's sort of expected to work. So you don't get much credit, you know, because it's what's expected. But I think we recognize how complex it is. You know, you have multiple sites and every day there's a new demand on your staff, and you know that certain people have certain talents and certain skills. So you can manage up to a certain point, you know, to minimize inefficiencies and to get the job, you know, properly manned, if you will. But the challenge is always going to be there because there'll be some new
Throw more buildings at you.
circumstance tomorrow. Yeah, you know, so it's an unending challenge, but I think it's good that you're still thinking creatively about, well, okay, how can we make this more efficient? You know, so that I think I commend you for that. And, it sounds like we're, you know, headed in the right direction.
And I do need to compliment both Amy Peters and Terry Weborg for all the help and guidance and all that. I mean, I use the word architect, that they were as much in this as I was and Elizabeth wasn't designing it. And I'm saying that so I get to share the blame with them. It doesn't work. Just kidding, guys.
It's not enough. We'll be successful.
All right, so thank you. And then we'll continue on with our agenda here. There are no specific questions about what John presented. So it looks like next is the executive director's report.
And I will be brief because I've got next week as well, but I did send out a reminder. The Crystal Lake Park District is celebrating their centennial, and they do have an event tomorrow night at the beach house. So again, if anybody had an interest in wanting to attend, I could RSVP, and I'm sure they would still invite you to come, but that is tomorrow night. Also, the environmental defenders just sent out information. They are going to be having an open house for the holidays on December 3rd. Downtown on the square from 5 to 7 p.m. So I'll put that out there too. And then the COG is doing their holiday dinner on December 15th. It will be in person and will be at the Holiday Inn in Crystal Lake. This is a great opportunity. It's very well attended by the mayors and village presidents and the board of trustees and county. and elected officials. So if there's an interest, this is one I would highly recommend to the board. If you haven't attended others and you want to, this would be one to go to if you're comfortable. So let me know, we can register you for that. There is, you've probably been hearing a lot on, or at least we've been getting updates, and I'm sure with COVID-19, yes, we're still with this wearing masks, and we hope that this someday we can say, we can take these off and everybody's getting their vaccinations and getting their boosters. And we're still meeting, but OSHA, initially there was some information that was being sent out on the enforcement of an emergency temporary standard. That if you employed more than 100 employees, that you were going to have to mandate vaccines and regular testing or other things. Obviously, being able to make accommodations were appropriate. And so we've been monitoring that. There was just a pushback. Obviously, a lot of lawsuits are taking place. And so they put a stay as far as that requirement at this point, but we're monitoring it. The reason why that's important to us is that as we look to bring on seasonals and then we look forward to the up and coming year, we're going to have to make some decisions. And that number, if in fact that goes forward, that would potentially move us into a place where we would have to change and have a policy perspective of mandating vaccines. And so right now there's a stay, so we'll just continue, but I just wanted to keep you apprised of what those developments would be.
Elizabeth, what's the number on that?
100 employees. 100 employees, and it's not that they're working separately, it doesn't matter.
It's not that they're
Hundred
temporary.
total.
Not that they're temporary, you bring on 100.
We employ 101.
And the state, and Andrew can chime in here too, I mean, the state can offer more restrictive to the federal guidelines under OSHA. But at this point, as I said, there's lawsuits, and so we just got an alert from Paderma, who's been monitoring, and because we've been looking for guidance of how's everybody navigating this, because some employers that are members have already made that decision, but they're just straight out mandating it. Others, they were, so every organization's been doing their own thing, and that was one of those things, unless it's mandated by a federal regulatory group, do we need to, how are we? And we've been doing, we've been encouraging, we've provided flexibility, and we've been able to keep our employees and families, safe. I mean, I think we've been doing exceptional during COVID. But anyhow, I just wanted to make sure that I was sharing with the board some of those things that may come at our doorstep that we'll have to make a decision on or not. It'll be forced on us. The district does an annual conservation champion and legacy program. It's our internal program. And so I just remind everyone, if you know of someone, the deadline for that is December 31st. And one of them is for an individual that has contributed in a significant way. And the other is given they have past deceased for at least a period of 3 years. So I'm sure there's a lot of conservation champions to recognize, and so we encourage those submittals, and you can do that online. And the foundation, they did agree, just reporting back to the board at the last meeting in October, we discussed the changes to the memorandum of understanding, and that volleyed back over to them at their last meeting. They had no additional changes to make to the MOU. Roger Stell, who is the attorney for the foundation, did bring up, though, the potential that they look at directors' errors and omission and coverage. And Paderma covers our board of directors, and it covers the foundation's board of directors, but at 1 million. So his thought was that seemed a little bit based on the type of litigious society that we're in, that maybe they should consider getting a supplemental policy and not that much to explore that. So the foundation is going to explore that. I did talk with President Penning, and so he has tasked me to also take a look at to see what that cost would be for this board to ensure that we had coverage, and then I'll bring it back to you as well.
How much coverage you're looking at over, you think?
I don't know, 5 million, or I mean, right now we're at 1 million.
Right.
And we have never, and I did ask this and just talking with other executive directors in the space and to council, let me know, have any other businesses bought that additional supplement in the government sector? And I don't know that they have, I'm sure someone has, but that cost differential, so I'll get it on the board. to evaluate that. But I was thinking, see what the cost is on a 5 million. That next step. If you have a recommendation.
Does Andrew have an opinion? Andrew, are you still there?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute here. It's always worth exploring. Depending on claims, the individual officers may still be entitled to indemnification or protection from the resources of the district. But obviously you don't want to have to go into taxpayer reserves to pay for that stuff. So I think, like a lot of things, it's probably going to come down to a question of what does it cost, right? You got to balance the pros and the cons and look at how much does it cost for the additional coverage, and does it make sense for the district? $1 million in this day and age, probably. I mean, it's certainly not a ton, but I mean, is it enough? If you don't have a history of claims, maybe. But if it turns out that additional coverage is relatively inexpensive, then maybe that's a good way to protect the district moving forward. But again, I think we just probably need to wait and see what the numbers come back for the policy, and then have a discussion from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's see here. We've been getting different requests. Paragliding, we talked about Lions Prairie March, so we're already as a staff going to be meeting about that. I had sent out to you with the shared services with McHenry County and the Sheriff's Department to kind of chip in for $1,000 is what they proposed annually to be part of that program. And so I went ahead and get the go ahead. We'll do that in our budget so that we can participate. And they were very happy to see us. They wanted to get that full participation. And then obviously
Was that the social worker?
that's the social worker. Yeah, the social worker with the sheriff's office. That's okay. To the units of government. And then the other piece that we just were briefly talking about a little bit earlier too is, so I had sent out information as we met with the county and Senator Wilcox and Representative Wright on 300 West and Arnold Engineering. They did intervene and sent correspondence on to the EPA and the AG's office. And we did get a response, came back through to Representative Wright on their joint communication. And I did send that off to our special counsel who reviewed that and provided some areas where it fell short of what really we've been after for quite some time. We've been directly impacted on conservation district land since 2015. So the proposal, if it's agreeable to this group, is to go ahead and forward those responses, and where we feel it does not answer the questions that we still continue to ask, send that on to the county, send it on to our state elected officials, even potentially send it off to the governor's office, and just continue to do that. And a suggestion had come up that maybe we ought to kind of bring in and share it with some of our environmental conservation groups as well.
Yes, I think that they're trying to wear us down, and so I think you have to respond to every delaying tactic, and if you can build up. If you have to stop talking to ourselves, because we all agree that something needs to be done. We have to get a wider group. So the idea of reaching out to other conservation groups that are looking for a good cause, I think this is a wonderful cause. And then getting it in front of the most powerful politician that you can, and don't let them take their eye off of it. And so I support going ahead and these multiple tracks. Trying to get someone to recognize what's going on.
Currents on that focus to keep that back. Yeah, they're waiting for us to wear down. We don't wear down. This is a tough group.
Maybe the thing is chicken is the state of Illinois, maybe they're paying off. Well, that wouldn't be the first time.
I agree.
So, I said, you spill a gallon of gas on the ground, right? So you got to, you know, the EPA are there right away, making you clean it off.
Well, let's see, I think that, and I'll do the rest next week, so, the back to the high level of what I have to report on, so, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so 7.0 is other. Are there any other issues that you would like to talk about? Or we ask for public comments number 2. Anyone out there? We don't hear any public comments number 2, so we're going to go into executive session. Do we need a motion to adjourn from the regular?
Well, we need to get a motion to go in executive session
Okay, Pat?
I'll second that.
or 2C1 personnel and 2C21 review.
Perfect. On the vote now, Megan?
Trustee Fritz,
Yes.
trustee Dom,
Yes.
trustee Thomas,
Yes.
trustee Campbell,
Yes.
trustee Gayton.
Yes.
Trustee Coe.
Yes. Okay, so now we're gonna go into executive session.
And we will come back, but there's no action planned after executive session. So, but we will be together next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Or do we just adjourn?
You can adjourn.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right. Good. And Megan, if you'll call the roll.
Trustee Gayton.
Yes.
Trustee Fritz,
Yes.
trustee Campbell,
Yes.
trustee Thomas,
Yes.
trustee Dom,
Yes.
trustee Coe.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.